Since the topic of color correction and shading has found its way into mainstream topics, normal average Joes are talking about it. But on the other hand, big hits are missing out on this. I found this as an opportunity to talk about this one for this video, of course. Well, this isn't about movies being good or bad. It's about solely focusing on imagery itself, which it's important on its own self because I think we should judge books by their cover. If you are going to trouble yourself enough to make a good movie, well, might as well end up creating a good cover for it, convincing me to pick it up from a shelf. Of course, they're not physical. You can see trailers, you can see stuff online. And that's a good indicator. Listen, I'm a consumer. I haven't been fed good things, good slop to consume, but you gotta give it to me. They also haven't noticed what's wrong and something's off with their imagery because, well, recently we had this discussion on internet about how CGI has its quality reduced drastically. And some may say, as a consumer, I'm in no place to criticize the whole trend. But this has turned itself into a genital that no leaf cannot cover. I think you have came across those short videos on the internet about how advertisement in the past looked better than it is right now, or, you know, the compilations that have this Y2K style and well thought out design. And some may say those who complained why advertisement doesn't look like what it was are struggling with this personality that their whole life is ads and they're consumers for advertisement. Their art is advertisement, but isn't that the whole point? Because if I do not mind what I consume, if I do not complain about it, I end up what I am today, who cannot differentiate between porn and newly released movies. Some may say it feels like newcomers are figuring out about the party that they haven't been invited to, like the midsection of bell curve, reaching out to the part where high IQ ones are residing. I think that's not a bad thing, because they can pressure those who can. I'm not punching the air, but some of y'all would say that this can be summarized in consumers whining, bitching, and wanking constantly. If that's true, then why the hell the same style of imagery has been implemented in other forms of media, including art in general? Besides, I have the privilege of being a designer. I design shit myself, and I know when complaints are legit. At least more than uninterested folks who are watching. I genuinely try so hard to prevent myself from getting involved into petty discussions like this, because it almost feels like I'm being nostalgic, and artistic workflow will eventually evolve into some underlying significance or a nuance that I am having a total disregard towards. But listen, I really am not being nostalgic. What exactly was happening was directors all of a sudden were coming to this collective conclusion to upgrade something with no flaw. And what ended up happening was them erasing their own memory. But the cool part of it is we're still human beings with perception who understand what you cannot see signifies what you'll see. It's part of our psyche. We cannot get bombarded with excessive data. And let me use this example. Saving Private Ryan. It's darker color tones kind of feels like technologically advanced than movies today. It feels so advanced, as if Lockheed Martin had involved himself in its production. When I see that, which is from 30 years ago, I feel like I'm the one from Cave who has just discovered fire. A boomer has no right to be this good. Than us. Us who are people of future. We've gone so far into the future, we're living past the timeline of Black Ops 2. And because of that, I hate to break it to you, you gotta raise some standards. Which is happening. People are doing it. Good. Awesome. Perfect. But what about those big box office hits? Did their crew get the memo too? Seriously, what takes you so long, Einstein? I think in 2025, Anemone did a good job with imagery, but that's one example out of many. And I'm not being optimistic about sun rising from west one of these days. Look, one way or another, we gotta take the matters into our hand. And requirement for being a good producer is being a good consumer. Knowing is half the way, which is a lot. And there's a good chance that tides will turn if we develop this as a habit of ours. Anyways, I think one of the recent appealing trends I've came across was disregard towards streamer opinion. It gave new meaning to taking matters into our hands. If you're wondering what I have in mind as reference, then good. I want this question to be asked from me. And I will reference movies from decades with odd numbers, because I think people are like sleeper agents, and upon exposure towards a decade with odd number, they're like, you know what we need? Ambition in our media. I think there's a good reason as to why action movies in 80s used to get called cheesy. In 80s, art kind of felt commodified by higher ups. And they had this target audience which usually favored the quantity. Long story short, why not give Duelist from Ridley Scott a watch? It was released 2 years prior to Alien, which I believe is one of the greatest byproducts of the 70s. An odd number. And the Alien also gave a good chance to Hans-Rudy Giger to blossom with his art style. And you know, I'm thinking Konami in 80s was thinking, you know who's missing out on horrors beyond comprehension? Of course, children. And they rightfully incorporated Giger's art style in Contra. Starting from 90s, give Bram Stoker's Dracula a watch. It has a nice visuals on it. Also, shadows have been taken seriously to the point where you'll see literal silhouettes of characters inside of it. Jacob's Ladder is a must. Basically, you won't recover after watching this one. It's the main source of inspiration behind Silent Hill. Big Lebowski, if you haven't already, give it a watch. Seriously, what are you doing with your life if you have not? It's the best story that has been narrated so far, and some people still have the audacity of not knowing this movie exists. For the record, watch Matrix if you want to take some notes. Pretty underrated, huh? And I think that sums it up. See you around.